Good morning, Chairman. We are now live.
Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone present in the chamber and to those listening online to the business of the Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Thomas Sneath. I am the chairman of this committee. Councillor Bailey Robinson, my vice chair, is also present. Can I please remind you that audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting will be broadcast live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the chamber, exit the building through the reception and assemble in the front car park. Please have any mobiles, laptops or iPads on silent mode. The hearing loop is now active. Requests to speak will be collated and announced by the Vice Chairman. I will try to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and make contributions. I would appreciate contributions to be clear and concise and ask that you indicate early when you wish to speak. We now move on to the formal agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence and replacement members.
Since the agenda publication on Friday the 13th of June, we have had 3 changes to the committee membership, with these being until further notice. These are for Councillor Neil Carey, who's been replaced by Councillor Chris Reeve, with Councillor Jane Smith being replaced by Councillor Stuart Grantham, and Councillor Mansour Hassan being replaced by Councillor Jane King. For today's meeting only, we have apologies from Councillor Richard Wright, who's been replaced by Councillor Tom Dyer, and we also have apologies from Councillor Ingrid Sheard being replaced by Councillor Mansour Hassan for this meeting only. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2 is declaration of members' interest. This is an opportunity for members to declare any pecuniary or other interests. Do members wish to declare any? Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 3 is minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 2025. This item is to approve and assign the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Please turn to pages 5 to 14 of the agenda pack. Members are reminded that we are considering minutes of the previous council term in relation to them being a correct record rather than relation to whether members were present for that meeting. With this in mind, do I have a proposer? I've got Councillor King and a seconder. Councillor Grantham. I'd now like to call that to a vote. All those in favour, please signify. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Those minutes have been carried as a correct record. Moving on to agenda item number 4, announcements by the chairman, executive councillors and lead council officers. I would like to make a formal welcome to you all on this first meeting of the committee for the new council term. Whether you are returning or joining the committee for the first time, thank you for all your commitment to this important area of work. The issues that we scrutinise here are ranging from road maintenance and winter resilience to public transport and flooding that affect our transportation network and directly affect the day-to-day lives of our residents across Lincolnshire. At the start of this new council year, I would like to briefly reflect on the wider context in which our work takes place. Nationally, the continued impact of extreme weather has once again highlighted the importance of strong, well-resourced winter and drainage services, in particular flooding across parts of Lincolnshire and the wider region earlier this year, served as a reminder of the value of robust planning, effective gully maintenance and coordinated emergency responses. These are all areas where scrutiny plays a vital role in holding systems to account and identifying where improvements can be made. Locally, I also want to acknowledge the progress made through the Council's existing highways contracts, but also recognise that public expectations remain high, particularly in relation to highways infrastructure, development and connectivity improvements across the rural and urban network, and also on issues such as potholes, signage and communication around maintenance. These are concerns we hear often from our residents, and I hope we can bring a constructive and inquisitive approach to these matters throughout the year and beyond. Finally, I'd like to extend a thank you to our officers for preparing the agenda and reports before us today. The coming year offers many opportunities for meaningful scrutiny, and I look forward to working with you all to ensure that we make a positive contribution to transport and infrastructure across the county. Can I take this opportunity to remind members of the upcoming session for members' induction, session 16, on strategic questioning skills training for scrutineers, which is being held on the 30th of June and is approximately 90 minutes of interactive training session designed specifically for Lincolnshire County Council members that aims to strengthen members' effectiveness in scrutiny by focusing on strategic questioning techniques. I hope all members have this date in your diaries, and if not, please would you liaise with Andrew Warnes following the meeting. Turning our gaze to today's business, we have a lighter agenda that includes consideration for one pre-decision item. However, I must stress the importance of taking reports as read, and I ask that our presenters summarise the key points and the type of input expected by the committee to allow ample time to be allocated to discussions. Thank you. Moving on to, do we have any announcements from the Executive Council? Thank you. Finally, do we have any announcements by senior officers? Thank you. Moving on to the main business of this meeting. Agenda item number 5, the Winter Service Plan 2025. This is a pre-decision scrutiny report, can be found on pages 15 to 85 of the agenda pack. The report sets out proposed updates to Lincolnshire County Council's Winter Service Plan 25-26, which outlines how the council manage its responsibilities for keeping the highway network safe and passable during winter weather conditions, particularly snow and ice. The report will be considered by the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport between the 30th of June and the 8th of July. The actions required here today is to consider and comment on the context and determine whether we support the recommendations to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport as set out in the report, and that we pass our comments to the Executive Councillor in relation to this item. The report will be presented by Jonathan Evans, or I believe it might be Claire Dixon, Policy and Assets Manager, will also be present, and Jonathan Evans naturally is the Head of Highways, Client and Contractual Management Services. Over to Mr. Evans, or to yourself, Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. So we've got a couple of speakers today. Claire's going to run through the actual report, and then myself and Darryl and Claire will be here for questions if the scrutiny needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The Winter Service Plan is a key operational document that supplements the Highways Infrastructure Asset Management Plan. It outlines how Lincolnshire County Council meets its statutory duty under Section 41(1)(a) of the Highways Act 1980 to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, that safe passage along the highways is not endangered by snow or ice. The plan is also informed by the National Well-Managed Highway Infrastructure Code of Practice, which promotes risk-based, evidence-led approaches to winter maintenance. Lincolnshire's winter service operation is extensive and robust. The council maintains a fleet of 43 gritters with an additional 4 held in reserve. These are strategically located across the county to ensure rapid deployment. The entire precautionary salting network can be treated within a maximum of 3 hours of the gritters leaving the depot. The plan covers gritting of the highway network during winter conditions, covering an operational period of the 1st of October to the 30th of April. However, provisions to extend beyond those dates can be made if required. Our winter service operations will give priority to a 3,018 kilometre network of priority routes, and details of these routes can be found on our website. We use a route-based forecasting system which integrates weather data and predictive modelling to determine where and when salting is required. This ensures treatments are targeted and efficient. Salt stock levels are also carefully managed. At the start of the winter season, we hold a minimum of 25,000 tonnes of salt, with a policy requirement to maintain at least 15,000 tonnes of salt throughout the season. This is in line with the Department for Transport expectations and national best practice. At Appendix B and on page 67 of your report pack, you will find the statistics for the winter service. To provide some context, in the 2023-24 season, we carried out 51 precautionary salting runs and used 12,136 tonnes of salt. There were no snow days. In the 24-25 season that's just passed, we saw increased activity with 69 salting runs and 18,197 tonnes of salt used. 2 snow days were also recorded on the 19th of November 2024 and the 6th of January 2025. A winter rally is scheduled for late September. This is a critical part of the preparation involving refresher training for gritter drivers, vehicle checks and route familiarisation. Salt and grit bins will also be provided and maintained on request if the location meets the criteria set out in Appendix C, and a responsible body undertakes to spread salt or grit when necessary and inform the network resilience team when it needs refilling. We are also continuing the naming of our gritters, with 7 being named already. 1 was named on the Friday just gone, and a further 4 to be named over the coming weeks. These are names based on suggestions from primary schools, care homes and day centres. The budget for 2025-26 is 3.456 million. This is based on a hypothetical average winter will allow for 65 salting runs. The budget also supports the procurement of replacement gritters through capital funding. This year's winter service plan has undergone a thorough review to ensure it remains aligned with national guidance, statutory obligations and operational best practice. While there are no changes to the core policy, several important refinements have been made to improve clarity, efficiency and alignment with current operational procedures. The following amendments have been made. The key points within the previous section 1 have been removed to streamline the document. These were identified early on in section 2. We have done a slight reordering of sections 2.1 to 2.4. This will better reflect the actual procedural flow of salting operations. And we've also removed the outdated list of main villages from Appendix A. This list originally was compiled between 1981 and 1991, and it no longer reflects the current operational realities. But I do want to assure members that we have not removed any villages from the precautionary salting network, and members can view whether their village is salted by reviewing the map on the LCC website. Also, any requests for new routes to be added can still be requested in the usual way using the network evaluation form, which can be found in page 31 of the winter service plan or page 54 of your report pack. Finally, in the past, some operations within the winter service plan were referred to by more than one name, which occasionally would cause confusion. And to improve transparency and ensure everyone has a clear understanding of our services, we have now adopted consistent terminology throughout the plan. Finally, a significant development is ongoing is our route optimisation project, which aims to ensure our salting routes remain efficient and cost effective. This project is assessing the current configuration of depots and routes, the impact of new gritter technology and spreading methods, and the inclusion of new roads and changes in network usage. The goal is to implement any recommended changes in time for the 27-28 winter season, and this work will help ensure we continue to deliver a high-quality service while maximising value for money. An interim winter service report which provides a mid-season update shall be presented to this Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee on the 26th of January 2026. And following today's discussion, the Executive Council will be asked to approve the updated winter service plan, and if approved, the plan will come into effect on the 1st of October 2025. That's it from me. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for your introduction. I would now like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statement and ask questions. Councillor Robertson, do we have any questions?
If I may start with my questions. Just looking at Appendix A, the network evaluation form that could determine roads to be gritted, it has the section injury accident record within the last 3 years that are ice and snow related, which gives 15 points per reported accident. I just want to make sure we preempt rather than react to accidents if there is a voice for concern of safety from local residents. Is this taken into account? And I note that we have several agreements with neighbouring councils cross borders to ensure that the whole network is covered. Do we have sufficient links and communication with neighbouring councils and national highways to make sure there are no duplicating efforts or missing critical routes? Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. I'll take that question. I'm Darryl Redford, Network Resilient Manager. For the first question about the evaluation form, obviously, if there is a considerable accident due to ice and snow, we will take that into consideration immediately, if possible. The actual score sheet is used to show the relevance of issues that have previously happened. So if there is something severe, we will react to that if need be. But we just need to be mindful of the fact that our gritter fleet is at its maximum capacity. So the fact that to add extra routes is very difficult, and it has to be done on a site-by-site basis. That's why we use the evaluation form. Obviously, we cannot salt every road in the county, and we have to prioritise. As far as commitment to having a communication with neighbouring authorities, that is part of our remit under Section 8 of the Highways Act. We have to issue communication, a letter at the moment to every neighbouring authority to agree what we salt and what we salt for them and what they salt for us, and obviously the communication of telephone numbers and email addresses if we need to get in contact over the winter. It's not normally needed, but it's there if we need it, and our out-of-hours staff have ability to contact, particularly National Highways, directly to their communication centre. So it's done as part of the operation. I hope that answers everything.
Can I just come in there and just add one comment? It was slightly wider than the highway service. It's the road safety partnership that we have. So any accidents that we have on the network, the road safety partnership will investigate them with the police and take action as necessary. I just wanted to make sure that was identified as something else that happens within the highway service, but it doesn't sit within network resilience, but it is a reaction to that accident that you flag in Appendix A.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grantham.
Yeah, hi there. I'm just looking at page 20. How effective would the new depot's reposition be, and what cost savings would this produce?
Thank you, Councillor Grantham. In terms of the optimisation software, the route analysis that we're looking into, at this early stage, we probably can't commit to a figure of what the savings are. However, the initial route study that we've done, we believe we're able to remove 2 gritters from our service. So at the moment, we've got 47 fleet vehicles that we have. by optimising the existing routes as is, we think we can probably remove the need for 2 vehicles. That's just linking up in a more efficient way the existing routes so that their drive time is slightly longer, but within our policy time. That saving from a sort of procurement perspective is sort of 100,000, sort of 150,000. That's not per annum, that's for the life of the vehicle. But we think there are opportunities here. So we're keen to have that discussion with members when the opportunity arises over the next 6 to 12 months. And we'd like to engage the Scrutiny Committee on that. We've got a bit of software that we've engaging with that models the depot locations, how many vehicles are at each one, and aligning that to our policy. The reason that we would like to take it's the winter, the one after next, is to engage thoroughly, do that process with members before adjusting the next winter service plan for the winter after. And we think it needs that time to go at it well and do it the best it can be. But we'd really appreciate, potentially, if the chairman agrees, that we have a sort of a working group formed over the next 3 to 6 months to engage on that.
Yeah, we have Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Claire, the term you used when you did your report was an average winter. There's also another terminology called climate change. How is that going to affect the winter plan? And also, the other question is the 43 gritters. How many drivers have you got for that? And have we any plans to increase the number of the drivers?
Councillor Clark, I'll answer that question. As far as climate change goes, we are seeing slight changes in the winters from winters past. We are seeing that, particularly in October, that winters are drifting slightly back into November. With very few runs in October nowadays. But on the reverse of that, they're drifting more into April and sometimes into May as well. So it's slightly altering the seasons. We often see, and if you do look at the data, that we get 3 mild years, which the last 3 seasons we would class as mild. We then usually get quite a severe winter after, and the last 3 winters have been what we call famine and feast. We either have very long periods of mild weather, 2 or 3 weeks, where we're not running at all, and then we will get a very severe period of a week where we're in -6 and -7 temperatures, and that's been different over the last few seasons, last few years that we've seen. So I don't know whether this is something that's the norm, or if it's just a slight change in the weather. So. But as far as I'm concerned, I think we're going to be seeing a severe weather in the next severe winter in the next 1 or 2 years. So it's time for it to come round again. So, but if you look at the data, that's how it works. As far as drivers go, we have 75 drivers at the moment. That's virtually one for every run for every week. But we try to get at least 1 week on, 1 week off. It's difficult to employ drivers at the moment, and we are pushing out adverts and looking for further 0-hour drivers that are available for us through the public. But it is a difficult situation, and there is a great demand on HGV Class 2 drivers at the moment. So it's always something that we have to strive to keep refilling. And we would genuinely like 86 drivers. That's where we are, but we're just slightly under that at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher.
Thank you. I note quite often I see this lack of engagement or difficulty for engagement coming in, and it was mentioned in the minutes of the previous meeting that there was some elements of getting key stakeholders on board for certain decisions. I raised it at community safety as well, that certainly in the city where we don't have parishes, we can sometimes struggle to get the engagement that we need. And with regards to grit bins specifically, it does mention in the policy that it seems that we rely on the parish councils quite often to let us know when those grit bins are emptied. And certainly in my ward for the city, we've quite regularly had a look in the grit bins as we've been passing and found that they've all sort of melted out and sort of gone solid and not possible. And I will say that when we report them, it's a very good service in getting them refilled. I just wonder if there's any consideration within that for the fact that the city doesn't have parishes and doesn't have that sort of natural route towards making us aware of those issues, whether that's something that's considered. The other thing that I've got a note on here as well, for a number of years now we've had issues with flooding, certainly in the Stampend area and on the cycle route along the Witham coming into the city in that area. I've had a couple of residents that have reached out recently, and I have actually put in a separate case question on this. It's forcing a lot of cyclists to come in on the road network. That's seeing them come over the New Eastern Bypass. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from residents saying that actually they find it quite unsafe at times with the volume of traffic or the speed of traffic entering those roundabouts and coming onto that system at the crossing points where the roundabouts are. So it's a twofold question, really. I'd be surprised if there's anything we can do about the weather and the river itself flooding that area, but it is strangling a key route into the city. And I just wonder if there's any consideration for a wider plan on how we're going to make it safe for cyclists to come in and use a transport model that, as part of the plan for Lincoln in particular, is quite a key element. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christopher. In terms of the first question in relation to grit bins, I think you're right to identify that the city is a different model to what we've outlined in terms of that parish engagement. We want as much as we can, if I'm honest. So if we've got residents out there that are able to use Fix My Street, that's a really good tool for us to hear there is an issue. So whether we need that, but from a resilience perspective, members of the public are able to lift a bin and have a look. We also, to avoid sort of that reliance on the member of the public and the parishes, we've also engaged our local highways team who are on a safety inspection now as part of that route. They also lift lids. We've given that a push in the last couple of weeks actually, because we want that checks to be done over the summer season for us to actively do it prior to the winter starting. So that's something that we're taking to mitigate that as much as possible, but we're always welcome to receive new inquiries, either that's from councillors or from members of the public through Fix My Street. In terms of the problems you identify with, I guess, cycle routes or key routes where we engage with flooding, from a sort of a road network perspective, you're able to put those routes forward. And I think as part of the route optimisation and potentially the next winter service plan engagement, we'd really like to hear those points or those issues. Potentially when we optimise the fleet, we're able to create a bit more capacity in what we do. And if they're on an area of the network where either we can drive a gritter, we're able to add that to the network. If we capture that as sort of a definition point, I outlined sort of we currently, for our precautionary salting, do A's, B's, schools of access within 500 metres or NHS hospitals. Potentially we could categorise a little bit more about cycleways, about how we do that. We do have the ability to like spread footpaths. We do that on places like Steep Hill in Lincolnshire. So we can add more challenging parts of the network onto the winter service plan if we need to. But obviously comes with that a budget pressure. So it's something that we have to balance and take into that risk-based approach. But we're more than happy to engage on those locations and look at that going forward.
Okay, Councillor Reeve, was there a question? No, that's fine. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just to confirm, out of the 43 gritters and the 4 in reserve, the council owns all of those gritters. Is that correct? And is responsible to replace them when they come to the end of their lives?
We're getting the last 7 next month, so that will complete all 47 being owned by the LCC, yes.
Okay, thank you. In respect to the lifespan of the gritters, when are we expecting to replace those?
10 to 12 years is what we can get out of them. As you can understand, salt and machinery is difficult and to mix. And we can look at the gritter life. And one of the other things that we're tending to do is looking at moving gritters from high usage routes to other routes so we can start to prolong the life. Also midlife overhaul as well. But it's a difficult thing. So some gritters we'll get 10 years out of, some we will get 12, but we will be pushing for the 12-year limit. Our first purchases were in 2019, so it will be towards the end of this decade when we will be looking to start thinking about the new fleet. So it'll be 2029, 2028 when we will start to look at that. As I say, the vehicles are well looked after by ourselves, wash down and things like that, and maintenance. So I'm genuinely hopeful that we will get the 12 years out of the majority of the machines that we've got. And with the way that things are going at the moment, we're not seeing any major problems with the fleet. So it's looking good at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I may, how much does a gritter cost, roughly?
Depending on the size, we've got different sizes of gritters. A 26-ton large one that we use in rural areas, about 150,000. The smaller ones that we use in the city, like the 6-ton spreaders, they cost around about 120, and the really diddy ones that we have two of, they're around about 90 to 100,000.
Thank you. And how does the council fund the gritters in respect to replacing them when they come to the end of their lives?
At the moment, we fund through capital. I don't know if you have anything to add on that one, John?
Yeah. In terms of the decision-making process we went through back in probably 7 or 8 years ago now, we made a case to procure them through prudential borrowing that the council does. The decision there in terms of the business case was that it puts us in a better place than leasing long term. So the leasing cost would be for a private firm to purchase the vehicles. More often than not, they had a margin on, and we felt like the best thing was for the authority to step into that space and buy them or purchase them via capital. And as Darryl outlined, Transport Connect, our Teckle company, maintain them on behalf of Lincolnshire County Council.
Just one thing to add to that, to John's point, is one thing that we've got to be realised of is this is an asset. So at the end of the life of the gritter, there is a resale value for this fleet. So we can, once we've ended the life of the fleet, there is interest in the chassis more than anything. And if we sell our fleet, we could end up getting from that sale another 3 or 4 gritters of the new fleet for free from that funding, from the sales of those older gritters. So there is an asset. If we were leasing that gritter, we would not have that ability to do that. It would be handed back to the company, and we maintain our gritters very well. And a lot of companies like to have that ability to get hold of those gritters because they have that asset. We now have that ability to use that.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And one just for the executive member in that instance. As we've just heard, the gritters are funded through capital borrowing. In the local election campaign, Reform UK made it quite clear that they were against councils and this council borrowing prudentially for capital projects. So my question is to you, to the executive member, what's Reform UK's policy in respect to capital borrowing to renew the gritter fleet? Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Dyer, I believe the questions were to ask to the about the report.
Chairman, it's a policy-related question. I can't ask officers a policy-related question. It's why the executive members sat in the chamber.
Okay. Executive member, you can choose to answer it, or if you wish to get back to the member, you are able to.
I will get back to the member on that, thanks.
Chairman, for the purposes of the committee records, can that response be published when I have that response from the executive member?
Yep, that's absolutely fine, Councillor Dyer. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Grantham.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Yeah, I'm failing to comprehend on why we're using a 3-decade out-of-date policy. Is this a failure to yourselves, or is it failure from the previous administration?
This policy is not 3 decades old. It's been changed over the years and has adapted. The Highways Act.
Yeah, Claire said you use an outdate policy from 1981 to 1991. My calculation, that's got 33 years out-of-date policy. So I just wanted to know, is that a failure on yourselves, or is that a failure from the previous administration not having an effective strategic plan?
That was picked up late by ourselves, and apologies on that, and that's why we have picked it up. We've noticed that certain villages around the county have grown considerably in that time, and you're quite right. It should have been picked up earlier, definitely, by myself.
Yeah, and if I may, Deputy Chair, just last one. Is there any more out-of-date policies that you're aware of?
No, we're not aware of any others. The one that's in the winter service plan that's getting adjusted is slightly more complex in that it's a population census data that was set in that year that had the population levels of all the villages in Lincolnshire. And what we used, because it was a moment in time, that set the precautionary salting network. So that allowed us to, as part of our policy, determine why we do certain strategic villages or towns. That it's a moment in time as such, so I wouldn't say it's outdated. It's just a comparison between the villages. In theory, we could use a census population from a number of years after that to determine the best route and those villages that have grown over that timescale. So what we found is places like Witham St Hughes weren't originally listed in that village list, has grown in population significantly. Hence that requirement or desire to do the optimization, reset the policy, and look at the precautionary salting network. What we didn't want to do over the last 2 or 3 decades is shift every year, because that will either make the public a little bit less aware of which roads are being salted, which is a risk in itself, and also the inefficiency of us shifting our salted network. So it's something that we've done. We haven't changed anything here technically. We've just removed the named village list. We'll be looking to correct that with you in the next period. Thank you.
And Councillor Vernon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, officers, for your report. Again, sort of very, very interesting. Just to raise some of the points that have already been made, but add sort of a different slant on them, as well as asking a few questions. I'm really pleased to see that the list of main villages has been removed. I think, as alluded to from previous speakers, over the years, villages have grown substantially, and other villages have not grown, and we've been left with this odd situation where some villages are not classed as main villages, yet actually are bigger than those that actually are classed as main villages. So I'm looking forward to sort of obviously moving that forward. In terms of the route optimisation, I would be very, very interested in this taking place. And I think sort of, again, alluding to the points I previously made, we have situations where perhaps village primary schools have closed, additional GP surgeries have been built, and indeed additional housing estates. And I think it is time to look at this, the whole setup again from a sort of gritting perspective. I'd like to ask the chairman whether he would consider allowing the working party on this to be a cross-party working group so that all members have the opportunity to contribute towards that. And I appreciate you may not be able to answer that now, but I'd sort of really like for you to consider that in your comments forward to the Executive Councillor. In terms of the details in the report, I'd like to just ask about the salt and grit bins being subject to vandalism. It's a question I raised last year, and quite frankly, I think it's absolutely disgraceful that people are vandalising these very key facilities, particularly in the rural areas where actually an awful lot of people use the grit bins. And I know the member, Councillor Christopher, behind me has commented on perhaps it not working quite so well within the city, but certainly within the smaller parishes, these grit bins are a vital lifeline at this time of year when weather does get worse. So I'd like to ask how much of a problem that is. I'd also like to ask on page 69 about the salt usage and number of runs. I know not a huge amount, but there are more runs that have taken place, but we've used less salt. Is that sort of an efficiency through better route planning or sort of, yeah, and as I say, it's a very small difference, but I'd just be interested to know why that's the case. I unfortunately agree with you, Darryl, that after a period of very mild winters, we are likely to see quite a severe winter at some point in the future, and I'm really pleased to see that you're obviously sort of preparing for that. In terms of technological improvements, do you feel that those improvements have brought more efficiencies in terms of precautionary salting turnouts. I realise that your technology is improving all the time, and therefore that in itself will bring cost savings through the very means that, quite frankly, the data that I'm sure you have now is far advanced to perhaps 5 or even 10 years ago. So I'd be interested to know that. The gritters swapping routes from time to time seems a very sensible approach. There will be some routes that are inevitably much heavier and have further issues than others. And then my final point is just to talk about the actual marketing around gritters. I spoke last year in this scrutiny panel about how fantastic it is to see some positive news stories around the gritting team, the naming of the gritters, the involving of the local care homes and the schools. And I think it really brings awareness of the roles that you do. And I think it's very fair to say that when I was first elected in 2022, I had no idea what went on behind the scenes and how much work was actually involved in ensuring that our roads were safe to travel when we went out to travel them. You guys are out all night, every night, sort of keeping us safe on the road. So I'd like to thank you for that and ask you to very much keep up the good work in terms of the positive news stories that are out there. So often it is negative, and it's great to see those positive stories. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Vernon. I'll attempt to answer those questions. Let me know if I missed something. So in terms of the salt bins, we do still get vandalism, mainly in the form of rubbish or other detritus being left in the top of it. It's not ideal, especially when we go to those locations and it doesn't allow our operatives to even replace the content, because sometimes it'll have needles in there. So that's something that's concerning to us. Obviously, we stress to the public, please don't use them as bins. We hope that those locations are around the county, or we can contact the district if there is a need for a bin at that location. But putting it into a grit bin isn't where we want it, because it will cause us issues longer term. As I say, we're trying to mitigate that as best as we can before they become in need by asking our local highway officers to lift the lids. So any times we see rubbish, we'll be issuing a task order out to our term maintenance provider, Balfour Beatty, to go in there, either loosen up the salt if it's like a hard crust or a hard top, or removing the rubbish or the syringes if we need to get specialists in. But that option is available, and we do that regularly. However, it's not a major concern, but it does happen more than you'd hope. In terms of technology, before I hand over to Darryl, who's going to run through sort of the data trends that you spotted there, we are open to modernising the fleet. We sort of progressively have done that over time. We are looking at the optimisation software at the moment in terms of how we best salt the network. We're hoping into the future, this might be 2 or 3, 4 years away, that we are able to shift dynamically on the night. At the moment, we define our precautionary salting network, and we have either a route-based forecast based on the weather stations that we've got across the county. We're hoping in time that potentially we can look at where it's not an all-out run and we've got greater capacity. We're able to do more of a risk-based approach in a specific area. So, for example, the Wolds regularly are needing to go out and hit that intervention level of less than 0.5 degrees. We could do more than the precautionary salting network in the Wolds area if the rest of the county didn't have the need. What we're looking at doing, and Darryl's working on at the moment, technology that can schedule to the gritter the new route. So that would allow us to dynamically optimize overnight. So it's quite an exciting area to look at, and that helps with, you know, as technology moves forward and communications from our systems to the gritter box, in terms of getting that Wi-Fi signal and allowing that SIM card to speak to each other, allows us to do that in time. So we're looking at that all the time with the desire to make ourselves more efficient. But I'll hand over to Darryl in terms of the data, what you're seeing in terms of the salt usage and the number of runs. But I think they go probably hand in hand with the discussion I was just saying about technology.
Oh, you're going to let me nerd out here, aren't you? So, salt. Over the last few years, over the last decade, there has been quite a big change in winter maintenance. We've seen some quite technological leaps. Firstly, in salt. Strangely, we don't use just salt. We use a salt molasses mix, which allows us to spread the salt, and then when the salt goes onto the road, it will stick to the road, so we don't get any wash off wind blowing it off, things like that, car movement. And that has allowed us to drop our spread rate quite considerably. So over an average season, we're spreading 3,500 tonnes less than what we would normally have spread. So that's why you've seen a partial drop. The other thing is in the previous years, we would do something like a domain spreading. A lot of people think Lincolnshire is just one big flat county. It isn't. It's got lots of different areas. We know that. We've got the Wolds, high up. We've got the Fens, low down. We've got Grantham. We've got all different areas. And we used to send those areas out. We've now gone even further. We can now send individual routes out. So we get the forecast for each route, and we are able to take that forecast. We're not using air temperature. We're using road surface temperature. That's another thing. And it's advanced and advanced over those years. And that's why you've seen salt come down and come down. Salt is our biggest expenditure, and that is where we want to make the efficiencies and savings. We need the vehicles. We have to have them. We need the drivers. We have to have them. We only want to use them when we need them. And also, it's the amount of salt we put down. So you've seen salt reduce. The only time that salt will increase is if we have a particularly bad weather, a lot of snow or severe temperatures. And then we're driven out to use that higher rate of spread. We have 3 different types of spread rate. 17 grams is our maximum. That's when we get really severe weather and a lot of water. But we can go down to 7 grams, which is quite low, and we're not putting as much salt down and keeping our expenditure down. As far as the gritter naming goes, yes, we have engaged. We've got now, we will have at the end of this season 12 named gritters. I know a number of councillors have come to those meetings. I was with Councillor Cheney on Friday at Stanland in Boston Academy. Where the kids were very excited to see the gritter, and it's good to get that name out. Normally we're in the background and nobody sees us because we're overnight, so there's a lot that goes on. And just one more thing, I don't know if anyone is aware, we do have some weather stations around the county that measure the temperatures in specific areas of the road so that we can target our decisions. And those decisions will come out over the winter, and those councillors will get those decisions, and you will see which routes are going out. To give you an idea of the difference, Manby and Horncastle in our Wolds area went out 77 times last year on average. At Pode Hole near Spalding, that went out only 50 times. So you can see the difference of where we're spreading. So hopefully that gives you a general overview of the technology, but there is a lot of advances going on at the moment.
May I just come back really quickly, and obviously don't want to lose the point regarding the working group in route optimisation with the questions that I've raised. And as I say, I'm very happy for that to sort of be discussed at a further point, but just to clarify, I'd be very keen to see that. Thank you.
No, Councillor Vernon, we are a committee, and I value your input and every member's input, and I will be speaking to the executive. I think it's a very valid and very worthwhile point. Thank you very much for making it.
And lastly, Councillor Grantham, another question.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I also just want to say that I'll look forward to working with you and making our roads safer and better. So I do welcome that imposition to yourselves as well. Regarding the got it down as a just over 3.4 million budget. When we do get modest weather through winter, I'm just wondering, do we use all that budget? What happens to some of that budget? Do we put that in the cash reserves in preparations for a very bad winter? And also, if we got overcapacity of the salt, do we sell that back instead of letting it in hard? And then my last one, I promise this is my last question, is regarding the grit boxes. I realise we've had 2 of our council members already say about this, but are there any rural areas that really need these grit boxes, and how often do they get replenished? Because I think another council member has already said that sometimes they just get left behind, vandalised, salt gets hard. I've seen that some of them myself, and I'm just thinking, well, we're sort of wasting money. Is there any way of retrieving that salt back? So that's, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Grantham. In terms of the budget for salt, we typically spend or allocate to spend about 1.2 million per annum. So as Darryl said, it's a big part of what we do. In terms of what we do with it throughout the year, all of our depots now have a salt barn, so they're covered from rain. We're in quite a good place there. What we see across the UK is highway services leaving salt piles outside, and obviously that's never a good thing. They'll have to sheet and tarpaulin it. So in terms of wastage, as long as it's suitably covered in a depot, we don't see much in terms of that cycle of waste, such a thing. So from a winter perspective, we don't sell back the salt because we know that the year after we're going to be using it regardless, and it can last another year. So there's no concerns there in terms of wastage on the depot. In terms of the salt, the grit bin, sorry, I think that's probably worth a review. We typically monitor the usage of each of our grit bins. We have the historical data of refilling. What we, I guess, don't want to do is remove an asset from a community that have valued it. Maybe they haven't had the need over the last couple of years. So we're mindful of it. If it doesn't meet our advertised policy, which we have listed in the documentation, we review it. So if we've got a damaged grit bin, we'll be checking that it meets our policy, and potentially we'll be engaging with that rural area or that city centre location to potentially remove it if it doesn't meet our policy. So those, I guess, efficiencies are being taken when they're available, but we know as a service, as councillors, you will know, it's a hot potato. It's sort of an area that we tread sensitively and try and do what we think is best for the community. Is there anything there I've missed?
Just to give you some background on the salt, and I'm more than happy if councillors want to come and look at a depot, winter maintenance depot, we can arrange visits for you to have a look. More than happy to go into greater detail at that time. But salt normally lasts about 5 years. That's what we look at. So we don't need to sell it back at the end of the season. One thing that we also do, I have a gentleman that heaps our salt so we can get quite a lot in, but he also rotates my stock so that any older salt is moved forward at the start of the year so we can go through it. So nothing lasts that 5 years. And if we have got any stock that is getting close to that 5 years, we move it forward. We had a little bit at Manby this year that we've moved. So we are always monitoring that. So we are very much aware of that. Just to give you an idea of the grit bins issue as well, and we'll just give you a food for thought. We have over 2,000 grit bins in Lincolnshire. That's a considerable stock from over around the country. We're quite high, and to fill those every year, if we just went around checking them all, we would be quite a high cost to do that. So, and we would only do that probably after a severe winter where they have been used significantly. We've got to look at how, when we've had mild winters, how we target that, and that's why we've asked our highways colleagues to look at into the grit bins as they're doing their inspections, as part of their inspections, so we can start to target our deliveries and use our money effectively, because otherwise we would be visiting a lot of grit bins and there would be no need to. And I think that's something we can do, but obviously happy to talk about it if you have any further questions.
Thank you, members. And I promise I won't go on about grit bins, but I do have one question for clarity. Who are able to use the grit within the grit bins? And if residents use them, is there any liability that they hold for spreading salt onto the paths and to the road? Thank you.
I do get this one a lot. Anybody is able to use them. They're for use on the highway, not for personal use on their own driveways. We do try to stop that. But yes, anyone can use them. And if anybody is just spreading salt in a manner that is seen benefiting the community, then there has been no legal precedence of anyone being brought up or to court on that matter. And I don't think it ever would be either. I think the only time that you do is if there's any malicious intent, like trying to clear ice and snow with hot water and then it freezing later, that would be seen as malicious. Using the salt from the grit bins, we would always recommend it and to put it on the paths, particularly the paths, but if also on the hills and unsalted network, as well would be great, and we would welcome any use.
Wonderful. Thank you, members. If there are no more members wishing to ask questions or comments, I move that the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive Councillor of details on page 17 of the report, namely that they approve the winter service plan for 25-26 as attached in Appendix A. Do we have a seconder? Sorry. And I ask, apologies, and I ask that our comments, as these have been captured by the scrutiny officer, be shared with the Executive Councillor for their consideration. Do I have a seconder? Councillor King. We'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour, please signify. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you, that has been agreed. Moving on to agenda item number 6, highways, gully clearing, drainage repair schemes and surface water flooding. This scrutiny report can be found on pages 83 to 88 of the agenda pack. The report provides an overview of how Lincolnshire County Council manages its responsibilities for highway drainage and surface water flooding. It covers the council's approach to gully cleansing, both routine and reactive, to remove debris from the roads and drains, drainage repair schemes which address more complex or long-term issues with damage or ineffective drainage and infrastructure, and surface water flooding responses, particularly where highways are affected by heavy rainfall or poor drainage. The actions required by us are asked that we review and comment on the details of performance contained in the report and recommend any changes or actions to lead officers and to the Executive Councillor for Highways and Transport. The report will be presented by Nathan Whitfield, Principal Engineer, Drainage. Over to Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you, Chairman. Within my report, I've included an overview of the work streams that are applicable to highway drainage and their scope, but this morning I'll be highlighting the key points within. So first up is cyclic drainage. In preparation for a start in April 2025, the methodology for selecting gully cleanse frequency was revised and updated, and that's to reflect the changing scenarios we're seeing out on the highway, particularly during the more extreme rainfall events we are experiencing, having had 3 major storms in the last 19 months, and that was at the time the report was written. The frequency of cleanse is now decided on a risk-based approach, and it uses the following data: silt level within the gully pot, Section 19 flood investigation reports, but I'll return to those later, flood near-miss data, flood inquiries from Confirm, which is our asset management system, and again, Confirm inquiries regarding leaf litter. So the gullies are now rated from a low risk to a high risk, and their cleanse frequency is 2 years, 1 year and 6 months respectively. So with regards to the financial year to date, we've got 6 gully tankers covering the county on pre-planned routes. Since April 2025, 23.6% or 37,785 gullies have been cleansed, with the remaining 75.4% or 108,533 to go. Again, those figures for at the time that the report was compiled. Working with our floods and water colleagues, they are undertaking quite significant village-wide drainage cleansing schemes at the moment. These are areas that have been identified as high risk from the recent flooding we've experienced over that period of time that I've mentioned, and it includes all surface water drains and culverts, excluding sewers. These locations were identified from, the phrase will keep popping up through the report, Section 19 data and flood near-miss reports and more recent data. We work closely with our floods and water colleagues once they've done their investigations, and we provide them with technical advice and support them with the interpretation of that data. Moving on to reactive maintenance. So far this financial year, 379 off-programme jetting jobs or investigations have been completed, with 34 number minor works jobs These will typically be small pipe where collapses have been repaired. We have to replace manhole covers and gully grates as they get broken. With regards in planned works, starting off with minor drainage schemes. These have a value between £10,000 and £150,000. That depends on complexity and resource availability. There are 18 minor schemes programmed this year, and as detailed in the report, some of those are complete and some are part way through, and others are being investigated and designed ready for the next financial year. The programme for 26-27, the next financial year, is being developed shortly. Okay, so moving on to major drainage schemes. These are typically schemes of value over £150,000 upwards. I've included 4 schemes in the report that are due to be delivered this year. We've got Seas End Road, Moulton Seas End. That scheme is now complete. We've got Woodgate Road, Moulton Chapel. That scheme is also complete. We have Windsor Drive in Spalding. That is currently under construction. And we've got another scheme which is in its design stage at the moment, which is Mount Lane, Kirkby Laythorpe. We're also undertaking partnership drainage schemes within Lincolnshire. We've got this framework where we work with our fellow risk management authorities. One of the large schemes on there to be highlighted is the Cater Avenue area in Spalding. This is quite a significant scheme for an area that has suffered some flooding over a period of time. This is currently going through a business case scenario with hopefully we're going to be successful in gaining some granting aid funding from DEFRA for that. We're also currently looking at Avalon Way, Temple Road area in Hazelby, Taunton St Peter, Astley Crescent Scotter, Chapel Lane, Mareham le Fen, Morton near Bourne, that's Hanthorpe Road, High Street, Station Road, Deer Street, Market Raisin, and Waterford Lane, Cherry Willingham. As I say, as a highway authority, we have an interest in those beyond necessarily delivering those schemes, but we do work with our colleagues. I mentioned earlier Section 19 flood investigation reports. The lead local flood authority, which is the county council, has an obligation to undertake flood investigations. As a highway authority, we receive those reports and we act upon them. Those works can be either immediate or we have to schedule works in if more significant works are needed. We're currently now getting the Section 19 reports from the January 2025 storm, and we are working through and scheduling those works as they come in. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you for your introduction. I would now like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statements and ask questions. Councillor Robinson, do we have any speakers?
Yeah, if I may start the debate. Considering our council's goal to produce long-term solutions for our drainage systems, when drainage problems are fixed, do we ensure that they are built to cope with the kind of weather we anticipate in the next 10, 20 years, rather than patching old systems that cannot keep up anymore? And are we doing enough proactive work to spot problems before they turn into emergencies, especially in flood-prone communities? Thank you.
With regards to subsiding schemes, there is a set of national standards that we have to work to for major schemes. It's quite a complex answer to try and talk, because it depends on all the scenarios that are involved. And we try and make the best use of the resources we have available. I probably think it's something that I would be quite happy to talk about in more detail. There isn't a very simple answer to give on that, but it's fair to say that we maximise the efficiency of the highway drainage systems that we do have, and we try and... I think the best way of putting it, there will always be a storm to beat whatever we design. We've seen in the last 19 months 3 major storms. We cannot remove all the surface water off the highway. We manage it as best as we can, and there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes on how we can keep improving on that. But more happy to talk about it in detail.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned gullies being cleansed. There is one in my division that was reported on Fix My Street because it was left when the whole street was emptied for the gullies to be cleaned, and for some reason that wasn't cleaned. I went down there, saw it wasn't cleaned, reported it on Fix My Street, got a reply back saying, oh, it's been done, work complete. Went down, looked down the hole, it's exactly the same as when I reported it. I did send an email to your section asking them, you know, could they explain to me what work was carried out? I'm still waiting for a reply. That's, you know, based on the gully situation, but the S19 reports, there is no, what's the word? There's nothing that the authority can enforce the partners to do, is there? There's a recommendation that could be made, but that isn't enforceable, is it?
It's really one for our floods and water teams, but obviously we try to improve the systems. Obviously, I'm talking about highway drainage systems. Where we know I have a problem, we will do our very best to fix it and fix it in a timely timescale.
So, because some of my division was flooded, S19 reports were carried out. Can I tell them now then that because S19 reports have been carried out, they won't be flooded again?
I don't think we can ever promise that, unfortunately, but I think Chris wants to jump in over there.
Yeah, I'll just ask if Chris is able to come in and answer.
Sure. So the flood risk and water management team sits under my area as head of environment. And the Section 19 reports are undertaken whenever we have a report of internally flooded properties or where there might be long-standing surface water issues blocking up a road and so on. You're quite right, Councillor Clark, the Section 19s are recommendations. We cannot compel other risk management authorities to act, but we do work very closely with them, such as the Environment Agency, Anglian Water, Severn Trent, the Internal Drainage Boards, and of course riparian owners as well. As Nathan's already pointed out, we are a risk management authority in our own right, dealing with surface water on highways. So obviously we prioritise what we can do as an authority, but we can never say that we will ever to be able to protect people from flooding. All we can do is better protect them from flooding from where they were previously if we're able to undertake works in a cost-efficient way.
Councillor Grantham.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Yeah, I was just wondering how many floodplains have been filled in for drainage systems? Because it seems to me when I looked at the 2022 to 2025 report, as you say, that when it comes to heavy rain, the drainage is not sufficient. But yet, when we had green natural spaces like floodplains, it didn't seem to have a bother with it. And is there any correlation to that with the flooding?
Unfortunately, that's not something I can answer. I'm here today to talk about highway drainage. Those are looked at by other risk management authorities or other colleagues. So apologies, I can't answer that one.
I think we might have a response though.
Well, not in total, because I'd need a bit more detail to be able to answer it. But if Councillor wants to speak to me later, I'll take some details and we can get back to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. And this is something that the council has to get right. I've known one gully that's not working lead to a house being flooded. So just one gully can have devastating consequences for a family. So this is incredibly important work that the council continues to undertake. And I have to say, whenever gully gangs have been out in my patch, I've only ever been impressed with them. They come out to do a section of work, and if they find the next few drains along need work as well, they've just done it whilst they've been out. So they're adaptable whilst they're out on site as well. So I've only ever been impressed with these teams, Chairman, when they've been out and about. You mentioned the risk-based approach to gully cleansing, and there's a 5-point model, isn't it, within the report. I will assume that is flexible because this is a changing pattern. So my question would be, in respect to that, is this heavily dependent on public reports via Fix My Street, etc., to ensure that our records are updated? And if it is, my supplementary would be, what communication strategy do we have to ensure that members of the public are reporting blocked drains via Fix My Street? The public are well aware that you can report potholes via Fix My Street, but many aren't aware that that can extend to gullies, etc. That's my first question. In respect to reactive maintenance, and again, I've had gangs out in Waddington and they've done fantastic work clearing drains and gullies, but often these gullies lead into riparian drains. And in my case, those riparian drains aren't being maintained. I'm asking you the question, but I suspect it's probably one for Chris. Where the riparian drains aren't being maintained, it in effect makes our work pointless. If our drains are perfectly clear and it's flowing into a blocked riparian, the system's still going to back up. So what enforcement does the council take on riparian owners to ensure that they are on top of their responsibilities? Because from what I've seen, it's little to not existent, but I'm happy to be corrected on that, Chairman. And just whilst he's here, and it's mentioned in the report, it'd be remiss of me not to ask Chris, Section 19 reports, what is the backlog or what is the waiting list for Section 19 reports to be carried out? I appreciate that might be a bit of a trick question and putting you on the spot. And finally, Chairman, I've mentioned it in every committee I've been at, so I'll continue mentioning it. In respect to major drainage schemes, is there an element of capital funding to fund those drainage schemes? My question would be to the executive member, what is the council's position on capital funding for major drainage schemes? I suspect Chairman is going to tell me he doesn't know, and he's going to send me an email at a later date when he's been updated by Nigel. But if you do know, Chairman, I would appreciate that. And if you don't, if you could send an email to the committee at a later stage, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I will indeed do that, thanks.
So I hope we have captured all your questions. With regards to the gully cleansing criteria and the risk-based assessment is done, that would be obviously reviewed if you have another major event. If we see lots of reports coming in, quite clearly we would keep that. It's kind of a reactive situation. We'll keep monitoring that data. So in that respect. Riparian responsibilities. We are working as Highways with our floods and water colleagues and looking how we can maybe engage with the community a lot more with their responsibilities. It is probably the lack of understanding of riparian with respect to riparian responsibilities is something that we need to work on as well. But we are doing some work behind the scenes. It's in its infancy, but we are aware of that situation. Apologies, that's the ones down. And with regards to the capital funding the schemes, we've just got some additional contribution this year. So we are making good use of that money. I say we'll hopefully achieve 4 major improvements this year. Is there anything else that I've missed? Sorry.
Just thought I'd come in there to potentially save Councillor Cheen a task. In terms of the revenue funding for across the service, we are spending somewhere in the region of 4 million per annum. That's on the blend of cyclic and jetting resource on contract. And then in terms of the capital investment, it's in the region of 2 million per annum. We split them into major and minor schemes. So they go to different areas of the highway service, but that's the typical spend that we're doing at the moment. What we're finding at this moment in time is a bit of pressure on our volume of jetting. So we're spending 4 million on that investigation, exploratory CCTV surveys, data capture. It's unblocking a lot of issues in terms of that sort of silt level that we've seen historically sort of in the system. Off the back of that, there's a bit of a pressure coming from a capital perspective. So that's probably something we pick up in the highways strategy going forward later this year. That could be somewhere as an asset group that we're seeing a bit of pressure. Like we, for the existing strategy, we did an accelerated improvement on the unclassified road network. We potentially want to do a little bit more in terms of capital expenditure on drainage. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, just to come back on Councillor Dow's question on Section 19 reports and what the backlog is, it's substantially decreased from sort of previous reports. I don't have the exact figures to me just to hand, and my laptop has just decided that its battery life is over, so I can't look it up. So I'll have to get back to you, and I'll obviously copy in Democratic Services to be able to feed that back through committee as well.
Chairman, if I could just ask a supplementary, if I may, just in respect to, you mentioned, Nathan, the work behind the scenes regarding riparian drains. I'm sure I've heard that before. So what is this work behind the scenes that's ongoing? Because it's a problem that's only getting worse. And I think local government likes to drag its heels a little bit. And I'd be really interested to know what that work is behind the scenes. And Jonathan, thank you for your comment in respect to capital financing, £2 million per annum. I suppose my question is still relevant to the executive member because promises were made in the election, and I'm curious to know how new policies will impact your work, because with respect, that's as it used to be, but if they're to adhere to their policies, then that may change. So I'd still appreciate a response from the executive member. Thank you, Chairman.
With regards to the riparian scenario, drainage law is incredibly complex. Beneath the highway, not everything belongs to the Highway Authority, particularly with respect to drainage. So there can be other assets under there who belong to water companies, who can belong to riparian owners. There may be features under there that we aren't even aware of because they've been there since kind of the midst of time. So we're trying to do a lot of work with legal services at the moment to make sure that we have got kind of a robust framework in place for starting to manage these scenarios. And then once we've got that all in place, the next step will follow on with, I think we're hoping, looking across the Cairo, kind of an engagement exercise. We want to let people know what their responsibilities are. With respect to enforcement, we do currently use the IDBs. They do it in what we call their extended areas on our behalf. But again, we need this kind of background work completing, and we'll say we're hoping to get it resolved very, very shortly. But drainage law, unfortunately, is very complex.
Chairman, could I propose that something to come back to this committee then at a suitable time for the committee to review?
Absolutely. I'd like to thank all the members for their questions and comments, and I can only echo Councillor Dyer's praise. So please pass that on, our appreciation from the committee, to all those that have been involved in all the processes. If we have no further questions,
just one more question.
Please.
Just one more question for myself. Just from experience as being a councillor for almost 2 months, I appreciate the time and dedication to plan out minor and major drainage schemes over 2-year periods. Are communities and local businesses well communicated with during this process to make sure that they are well informed and to cause the least disruption to local business and tourism? Thank you.
With respect to the major schemes, we do a full community engagement process. We try and get people engaged. One of the things that we like to do is actually go, when we're starting to investigate these schemes, if we talk to local people, they can give us a lot of knowledge. That is the first point of that. As we get closer to carrying out works, we do full letter drops. If deemed necessary, we will hold community engagement evenings and meetings, because doing drainage works can have quite a high impact for quite a short period of time, but there is a long-term gain from that. We like to be very clear up front with that. With regards to minor works, pass over to yourself, Sean.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Sean Butcher, Highways Programme Manager. Yeah, we follow a similar ethos really, where we're trying to get ahead of the programme, so we'll do letter drops, we'll put up signs on site in advance, and where we've got local businesses or schools that we think that'll impact on, we'll engage direct. And what I'd say is all roadworks, they will disrupt people and we'll get negativity around that. So we also use our comms team. We'll try to get information out where we know that's going to be a real burden on people locally.
Yeah, just following on for that, I just want to make sure that local businesses, business is a priority for the council, to make sure that that disruption is the least as possible, you know, for their, whether that's tourism, you know, in the peak areas. So just to make sure that, you know, in future we're making sure that local businesses and their opinions are quite high on the list of when we do work. Thank you.
Thank you, members. This now concludes the discussion of this item, and I move that the committee are happy to go ahead and support the report. We are happy with the reassurances we've had from the officers, and I'd like today's discussion to be shared across the relevant teams and passed on to the portfolio holder for their information and relevant actioning. Does anyone dissent? If so, please indicate now by raising your hand. Thank you. That is agreed. Moving on the agenda, we have Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on page 89 to 96 of the agenda pack. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Kiara Hati-Ahanu.
the scrutiny officer. The actions are to review the work programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for the consideration in the work programme. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this report invites all of you to consider and comment on and approve the current work programme of scrutiny activity to ensure that our focus remains targeted, timely and adds real value to the work of the Council and its partners. The work programme is a live document. It is reviewed at every meeting and designed to help us respond to key issues affecting Lincolnshire's communities, ensuring that we scrutinise services that matter to residents and influence decision when it's most effective to do so. Looking ahead, I would like to highlight a number of recent changes to the forthcoming schedule. The Road Safety Partnership Annual Report, originally scheduled for July, has now been moved to the September meeting. This will allow for the report to reflect the full reporting period and provide a more comprehensive update to you members. The Major Works Programme, which had been timetabled for July, has also been rescheduled to September. Again, this change ensures that the report can include a broader update on the County Council's resurfacing and infrastructure projects, enabling more in-depth and timely discussions. In terms of performance scrutiny, quarterly performance reports for both highways and transport will now come to the committee's next meetings. These reports had been temporarily paused to allow for alignment with the designed reporting cycle and to be a better match to a new scrutiny timetable. So following today's meeting, dates for the future quarterly reporting will be formally added to the programme. And these changes reflect our commitment to high-quality, evidence-led scrutiny that supports service improvement rather than scrutiny for its own sake. Members are encouraged to review the schedule and propose any additional scrutiny items that may be of strategic or local importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your introduction. I would now like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statements and ask questions. Councillor Robinson, do we have any speakers?
If I may begin, then I'll go on to other members. I would like to propose a new vision for the way we build and rebuild our road network. I think in this new council our roads need reform. As our council leader put, the Romans made roads right, so why can't we 2,000 years later? I propose we look into new technologies to provide long-term solutions. For example, graphene has had trial successes around the UK. Oxfordshire County Council suggested that the material could increase a road's lifespan by 165% compared to conventional methods. And Kent County Council have suggested that it could increase the lifespan by 2.5 times, potentially lasting 25 years. It suggested that including graphene would add 10 to 15% on the cost compared to using conventional material, but would mean less maintenance in the long run. However, this is just one example of the technology out there. Can I suggest we look into new materials, methods, and the way roads are built to ensure our roads are built for long-term wear and tear? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestion, Vice Chairman. We will take that on board, liaise with officers and see how we can produce a report that reflects on the changes and new ways for moving forward you have just proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon.
No, thank you, Chairman. Apologies. I'd just like to ask two questions regarding the forward plan. Now, obviously, I'm very conscious sort of new administration means there will be changes, but the rail recovery programme was due to be on the agenda today and has disappeared completely with no date to be discussed in the future. And this is vital and continues the work that we were doing on the rail recovery programme as part of the previous council term. The other question I'd like, and it may be Chiara who's able to answer this more than yourself, Chairman, is I'm not really sure I quite understand why we've temporarily paused performance reports for realignment, and would just welcome a little further information on that. I'd also like to ask why there is not going to be at all any Q4 performance report on transport. That seems to have just disappeared into the abyss. So I'd be very interested to know sort of what's happened to those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in terms of quarterly performance, it was removed from all scrutiny committee work programmes until we made sure that we had the right dates in the schedule and the right quarterly periods to be reported on. So they will be reintroduced. It was done across the board just for us to have a clear new picture to start rebuilding. Now, if you would like to remind me what the first item, was it about the rail recovery?
Yes, it's about the rail recovery. But
Yes.
Chiara, if I just may come back on that, sort of obviously the Q4 performance report has just gone, full stop. So at no point has there been any sort of scrutiny of that. And I accept what you're saying about sort of pausing for realignment and to ensure that it fits the scrutiny panel's sort of committee meeting points. But these are topics that we've addressed continually as a scrutiny panel over the last few years. And I think sort of it's important to see the year-end figures at the end of Q4. Thank you.
Absolutely. I accept your comments, and I will work with officers to make sure that these are fed in through scrutiny in the future meetings. Thank you. But also in relation to the rail recovery, yes, again, that is something that we are organising in the background, and there are certain stages for us to be able to make sure that we can get all key players in the room. So when we have an official date, we will be adding it on the agenda. It's not been missed, I guarantee you that.
Sorry, Chairman, if I may just come in again. Last time we had the relevant parties attend on Teams, I don't feel that was a particularly acceptable solution. And I know there were, Councillor Gibson, I know you were present for that meeting as well, and Councillor Clark, and would hope that you would agree that we would much prefer to see them in person within the chamber, if at all possible. If Chairman's happy with that, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be taken under consideration when looking at future dates. Thank you.
Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points. In respect to Councillor Robertson's points, now it is interesting, and councils need to be at the forefront of technology when maintaining our roads, such an important asset. Would it be worthwhile, perhaps, it's nothing to do with me, I'm not actually a member of this committee, but arranging a trip around the laboratory to have a look around the work that they do there? I think that would be insightful for the committee moving forward. And I know, for instance, the council has previously trialled again, been mentioned by Reform plenty of times, the JCB Pothole Pro. That's already been something that's been in Lincolnshire and been trialled. So I don't know if officers present can provide any context on that. Just a point, again, and I made it in the Growth Scrutiny Committee, we're in early days with having a mayoral combined authority, and some of our responsibilities that used to be reported to this committee have now gone up to the mayoral combined authority, and I'd be curious to know what the council's plan is in respect to scrutinising decisions of the mayoral combined authority, particularly when it comes to public transport performance indicators, because I think there's a gap there potentially that we'd be missing out on if that isn't being reported through to this committee. So just putting that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. I do feel that the Vice Chairman is anchoring after a trip around the laboratory too. I'm pleased you identified that. Thank you.
Any further questions or speakers? Councillor Grantham.
Yeah, could I also put forward that why we need to improvise new technology, we need to look at the state of our roads and what's underneath it. Now, some of our roads are still back from the horse and carriages way, and the stone underneath it is not, don't have the right depth to hold modern tractors and HGV. So if we can have the officers or get the investigation teams to have a look at our rural roads and look underneath it, because I don't even think they have the proper stone. Instead of having MOT type one, which can be compacted very well, we've got crushed concrete instead with barbed wire underneath it. And that's why some of the roads got wires coming through the tarmac. So if we can put that forward as well, I'll really appreciate that, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grantham. Yes, we will we'll put it forward on the work programme. If there's no further questions, I would like to thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes discussion of this item, and I move that we note the report and enclose the existing work programme as detailed on pages 89 to 96, with a caveat of any additional items highlighted in the scrutiny officer's presentation to be reflected in the next publication of this document. Does anyone dissent If so, please indicate now. Thank you. That is agreed. Members, that now concludes the business of this meeting. I'd like to thank you, the members of the public, the press, for your attendance here in the chamber and virtually. Thank you very much indeed.